these FNAFers, lol.
Hello, it is me, FNAF, Mimic from FNAF.
Oh, follow me.
Like my fursona?
Keep following.
Let me in, you dumb little girl. I thought we were going to have furry roleplay. I am pissed as hell and I will kill everyone you— Ow. This is not the last you'll see of me, lil ho.
Stupid FNAF Mimic from FNAF.
Hello people of the outside world, and today I'm talking about the Ruin DLC for Security Breach. The release had got announced not too long before release, and I ended up having to get a copy for the PS4 because the DLC wasn't coming to Xbox, which is the version I had. I ended up spending 6 hours in Ruin getting all 3 endings in the game and getting most of the collectibles, and I have to say, it was pretty fun. The gameplay is repetitive, but it isn't that big of an issue considering the short length for the DLC. There is a new gimmick in the game called the Virtual Augmented Neural Network Integration Unit, or VANI for short, and it's actually the mask from the Help Wanted DLC. In Ruin, the mask is used to go into an AR version of the Pizzaplex that can reveal things like objects that aren't real. It is also used to shut down these things called security nodes, which need to be turned off to access the lowest level of the Pizzaplex that Gregory is supposedly trapped in, but we'll get into that later. Security nodes, as previously stated, can only be accessed via the VANI network, and the way you turn them off is by locating corrupted objects that are connected to the node with wires. You just follow the wires to the object, interact with it, and then move on to the next. Once all the objects have been interacted with, you can return to the security node and then use your fast wrench, which we will discuss in a sec, and then play a little connect the dots minigame, and once that's done, it'll usually open up the area you need to go next. That might sound easy at first, and in a lot of cases it is. This DLC is much more straightforward than the base Security Breach, but there is however a threat while you're in the AR Pizzaplex, and that threat is something currently known only as the Entity. It'll appear after you've been in the VANI network for a while, and if you don't remove the mask in time, it'll alert animatronics to come kill you. Sometimes the Entity will activate machines that send out signals preventing you from taking your mask off, and you have to shut them down and take it off. That's the main gameplay loop, but there is another newly introduced mechanic, or I guess altered mechanic that was in the base game, that being audio luring on the cameras. Unlike in the base game, cameras can only be accessed through designated terminals rather than a fast watch, which isn't present at all. The audio lure mechanic works very similarly to how it did in FNAF 3, where you select a camera to send the animatronic by activating audio of a voice, except that this time it's with Cassie's voice. Also, I'm pretty sure they can be lured to any camera rather than one that's directly by Springtrap like in FNAF 3, but I may be wrong. In addition to these mechanics, there are also recurring puzzles throughout Ruin. The first one is a puzzle involving the fast wrench, an item you get early in the game. The puzzle's on a terminal, usually on a wall, and you have to fill valve-like tubes, and you have to try to get them all at a certain bar at the same time. I never found any of these challenging, but there are some parts at stressful moments, and it did work very well to build tension during those parts. The other puzzles that show up a lot in Ruin are the camera puzzles. Sometimes there will be a fake object you can't go through, and you'll need to go on the camera to make it feasible. The first camera will display certain images called anomalies you need to find on the other cameras. There will be one anomaly per camera, and you have to quarantine them by pressing a button, but it has to be done in the order they're displayed on camera 1, or you'll have to restart. And that's pretty much what Ruin has to offer for gameplay. It may not sound fun, but I found it pretty enjoyable. Now that the gameplay is out of the way, the next thing I'll go over is the visuals and the character designs. And on the topic of character designs, why shouldn't the protagonist be first up? And she's, yeah. She's really hideous, and as my friend Owen said, looks like a man. Also, in the art that displays her in the 5th chapter of the game, and yeah, this game is technically split up in chapters, but I'll explain why that is later. But anyways, during that chapter you can see art of Cassie being displayed, and in it she appears to be biracial, specifically black and white, but the original version we saw on the poster looks more blonde than anything. It's not like things don't get changed during game development, including the races of characters, but do I like that change? No. Only kidding, but not only does she look different from the poster, but the in-game model doesn't resemble the art like at all besides the clothes, but it's not that big of a deal. Now onto the animatronic designs, which are pretty good. First up, Chica, since she's the first to appear in the DLC, and she looks fine. She's not really scarier than what she was when we left her in Security Breach, and I already wasn't a fan of her original design, but when she jump scares you, this little hanging part flops around to your face, and it's funny. Monty's the next to appear, and he probably has my favorite of the redesigned Glamrock animatronics. In Security Breach, he loses the lower half of his body and has to drag himself with his arms. In Ruin, he's completely missing his shell, exposing his endoskeleton. The way he just kind of drags himself towards you is terrifying, and every part he was in was either terrifying or just tense. Next to appear is the Entity, and I think he looks kind of cool. The way he looks is making everyone think he has something to do with the glitch trap virus, and maybe that's true, but I don't really think so. He doesn't have a very scary design, but neither did the Glamrock animatronics at first, so this is a fine looking guy thing. The one everyone finds attractive is next, and she does look scarier and is definitely more so than Chica, but I wouldn't say more than Monty is. Next up is Music Man, or Music Men now, I guess. I mean, they look mostly the same, just extra dirty and decayed, but they're definitely more scary now because now there's several of them chasing you instead of just one. Now for the man himself, Freddy Fazbear. He's also present in the DLC, but he's missing his head this time around. His design here kind of reminds me of Nightmare Fredbear with the sort of mouse stomach thing he has. He's sort of scary with the context of him being like your best bud in the base game, but you probably aren't thinking about that when he's chasing you and trying to murder you. The final animatronic you encounter in this game is the Mimic. It's not explicitly called that in the game, but because of the books, we're like 99.9% sure that is the game version of the Mimic. I'm already terrified of the endoskeletons in the game, so making one look more disturbingly human-like and taller makes it even more horrific, so this is a beautiful design. Also, bonus character, you can actually see Glamour Bunny's remains if you shut down every wet floor sign in the game, and he looks sorta cool. I personally didn't take the time to do this, but it's definitely a cool Easter egg. That's all I wanted to cover for the characters' designs, but I guess I can talk about the state of the Pizzaplex and how it looks.
I'm a fan of the more simplistic way progression Ruin goes for. Instead of using like the main atrium like you do in the base Security Breach where like the stages and you access all the areas through that, instead in Ruin there is the AR system which allows you to go through the areas pretty much quicker than you would otherwise in Security Breach, and you kind of just, it's a lot more linear.
Pizzaplex itself looks fine and the destruction is cool, and it's actually dark most of the time, making it a little more scary this time around. And on the topic of scary things, a big part of being scary is sound, and Ruin has sounds, but nothing particularly stood out to me as incredible sound design or anything. The voice acting isn't bad, but really the only characters that have dialogue are Roxy, Gregory, and Cassie. Roxy and Gregory already sounded fine in the base game, and Cassie sounds fine here, but her voice definitely brings into question what age she's meant to be.
Is Cassie like supposed to be older? Because I mean I couldn't see her full model, but she doesn't look older.
Because she sounds like an older child, maybe age 14, but she doesn't really look 14. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of 14-year-olds that look younger, but I just feel like she's probably not meant to be 14, yet she sounds like it. There was also a problem with Gregory's voice with him sometimes just straight up sounding like a woman, but it's not that big of a deal. And now for the thing that most people care about, narrative and lore. FNAF is known for its convoluted and usually drip-fed lore, and people like it when a new release answers question, and does Ruin do that? Not really. I mean, it does reveal to us the Mimic, which is a huge thing, but that reveal only gives us more questions than it does answers. What's the difference between the book and game Mimic? What all does Gregory know about the Mimic? Why is there a scooper in the FNAF 6 location? These are only some of the questions the last 10 minutes of the game introduces, and I'm pretty sure most of them have been unanswered, but maybe they have, but feel free to remind me in the comments, just don't yell at me if I'm wrong. I would go over the events that happen throughout the game, but explaining the gameplay kinda already reveals all the major things in the story, but I will say that towards the end of the game, Cassie is told that the last security node she needs to access the basement is on Roxy, and she'll need to deactivate Roxy to progress. During the scene where she prepares to do this, Roxy talks to Cassie about her birthday party, implying Roxy recognizes Cassie. It kinda felt like out of nowhere, but it was a sad scene, I guess. The only other thing I like to discuss about the narrative are the 3 endings you can get. The first one you'll probably get is the elevator ending. You find the Mimic and get chased while being guided by Gregory to an elevator, and then are killed or attempted to be killed by Gregory.
For me, to save me. But we can't risk being followed. I'm sorry.
What? You're killing me? What? You're just gonna kill me? I really just got murdered.
The second ending you'll probably get is the Fredbear ending, where you ignore Gregory's guidance and make an incorrect turn where you find a sign with Fredbear on it. You interact with the sign and Gregory says that he's okay while Cassie breathes heavily, and a new rendition of the Princess Quest ending is shown, and then the game just ends. This ending is just weird, and I still don't fully understand it, but maybe Helpy is in some way related to Gregory, but that doesn't make much sense, so it could just also be a representation of Glamour Freddy. But why not just have the actual thing? The third and final ending is probably my least favorite just due to the stuff you have to do to get it. While running from the Mimic at the end of the game, you'll come across a hall with a door on the left and a door on the right. The left door will likely be locked, and the right door is one you have to go through to get to the elevator ending. There is, however, a way to unlock the left door, and that is by going to specific camera stations throughout the game and zooming out to reveal hidden cameras that once viewed unlock doors in the area where the left door is. There are 3 doors behind the left door, making 4 that need to be unlocked total, and 4 hidden cameras that need to be viewed. Remember the chapters as I mentioned earlier? Well, this is the reason it's in the game. Instead of making you replay the whole game from the beginning, you can actually go back to the chapters the cameras are hidden on, but this still takes a while, especially if you make a mistake and die. The ending is just the Mimic being in a weird mascot suit and chasing you through the new unlocked door, and you get behind the glass and use a sister location-like scooping machine to decommission the Mimic. My friend Owen said this was his favorite ending, and it's kinda cool and all, but I didn't like it at all too much personally. I spent half an hour to get a 25-second long cutscene. That wraps up just about everything I wanted to go over for Ruin, so let's just get into my thoughts on it overall. The gameplay of Ruin is very repetitive since you're essentially doing the same 3 or 4 things over again, but I don't think it's that bad because it's short enough to where it really doesn't matter that much. However, if you weren't really hyped for the DLC, you probably think it's kinda boring, but I think the puzzles are pretty fun regardless. Some new designs are questionable, but for the most part everything is sound. The Mimic has been in many theories as of late, and it's been questioned could the Mimic be in the games too, and it turned out to be the case, which is cool confirmation. However, besides the Mimic being canon to the games, not much else was answered, and there were more questions added, making the DLC not as satisfying as I and many other fans had hoped.
We are lost.